Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and it is time for me to finally break down what just went down in that preseason game against the Dolphins last night. I had a lot of my notes ready last night, but I wanted to watch the game a few more times, throat sore and stuff like that. But now I set an alarm to wake up early just to make sure I could get this out as soon as possible, man. And y'all already know we're gonna go position group by position group and everything like that. Shouts out to everybody that pulled up to the stream. But now we're here to break down the quarterbacks, the running backs, the tight ends, wide receivers, offensive line, everybody, starters, backups, anybody can get it, good or bad. We're gonna call them out for everything. I'm really excited because I feel like some people are a little bit more negative on what happened in this game than we should be. And first of all, when you come to preseason games, you don't come to win, you come to evaluate. I don't care about the final score, even though the kicker situation is terrible. And Jaden Daniels looks great, though. He looks efficient. I like the fact that we can see two different game plans from him. The first week, deep ball, being able to change things at the line of scrimmage. This week, on schedule, up tempo. We're going to dive into all that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for pulling up to all of the videos. Big shouts out to everybody that pulled up to the live stream last night, especially those of y'all that left a like, and big shout out to y'all that donated, man. Really appreciate that. Of course, I will be live streaming every regular season game, but when we get to the regular season, I'll be doing my call-in post-game shows as well. So after the games, y'all can call in and voice your opinions on the YouTube channel for everybody to hear and things like that. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. I'm really excited about this upcoming season. I'm definitely a little bit more optimistic than most people out there. I really think we can make some noise this year. But out of the way, man, let's go ahead and get into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. First of all, injury-wise, or really just anybody that didn't play. Like Marcus Mariota, Sam Hartman out due to injuries. I think Marcus Mariota is a groin injury. Sam Hartman is a shoulder. And they've made it seem like Marcus Mariota's injury is less concerning than Sam Hartman's. Like Marcus Mariota almost could have went out there last night, but I'm not exactly sure. Then outside linebacker wise slash like I guess edge rusher, you have Dante Fowler, Keandre Jones, F.L. Bada, and Cleveland Farrell. They were all out, and out of all of those guys, I think F.L. Bada is the only one that's hurt. Then linebacker wise, you have Bo Bauer, Bobby Wagner, and Jordan McGee. Now Bo Bauer just got hurt. I mean, like carted off the field just in joint practice, so I'm not expecting him to be ready anytime soon. And Jordan McGee, we haven't gotten an update on his injury, but it doesn't necessarily seem that good. They're keeping that one a very low profile. But Bobby Wagner didn't play just because he hasn't played a single snap in the preseason. They feel like he doesn't need it. And then tight end Zach Ertz did not play because he's about to have a baby, and they just, that's more important, man, than just playing these preseason games, man. You don't need to be out there. He may not have even played in the first place. And then Brandon Coleman at tackle, still dealing with what I believe is a pec injury right now. He didn't participate, but Dan Quinn said if you don't practice, you don't participate. So he was in pads, I think, at the joint practice, even though he didn't participate in the practice. And, that's a sign of encouragement there as far as him getting back healthy. But again, if you don't practice, you don't play. Dan Quinn made that very clear even before the joint practice against the Dolphins on Thursday. And then defensive tackle wise, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Jerzon Newton did not play. And Jerzon Newton is still banged up from what it seems, but Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne just straight up did not play because they just don't want to put a lot of our veterans that don't need the reps in any harm's way whatsoever. So starting defense wise, you didn't have Cleveland Farrell, Bobby Wagner, Jonathan Allen, and Deron Payne out there. So just to let you know, a lot of our starting defensive line, especially the front seven, was not out there today for that game. So just, keep that in mind when we're going through these evaluations. Now let's get to the quarterback position. We'll start with that first drive, and then we're going to move on to what Jaden Daniels did overall. I mean, really, he only was out there for 2 drives. But out of the way, the first drive, man, he ended up going 5 for 7 for 46 yards. Terry McLaurin was able to get 2 catches for 27 yards. De'Ami Brown had 3 catches for 9 yards. I'm not going to lie, De'Ami Brown looking like wide receiver 2 right now. We were talking about it in the chat while watching the game together. Does that mean that, like, should we be concerned? Some people feel like Dyami Brown being a wide receiver 2 is perfectly okay. We can make do with that. That's fine. Whereas even though I'm Mr. Optimism, I'm on the side of like, yeah, I like Dyami Brown. I've been rooting for him since we drafted him out of North Carolina. But if he's your definitive wide receiver 2, you may need to worry about your wide receiver core just a little bit. Even though I hope Jahan Dotson, I believe Jahan Dotson will get it together. And I like Olamide Zaccheaus a little bit. I like him more probably than like the average Commanders fan probably likes him. But still, if Dyami Brown is your definitive clear-cut wide receiver 2, maybe we do have a problem. But that was a nice debate that we had going on in the live stream while we were watching the preseason game together last night. Definitely let me know in the comment section how you feel about that situation. If Dyami Brown is your wide receiver 2, are you in good hands? Is he that good? Or is our wide receiver core just around him not being competitive enough to where it just kind of feels like he's winning it by default? Either way, though, moving on. Shouts out to Jaden Daniels because that first drive, they went 2 of 3 for third downs. And shouts out to Miami because they sent the blitz, which forced like an inaccurate throw from Jaden Daniels to basically kill the drive. And even then, they still should have at least made the field goal. But either way, shouts out to Zach Selby for pointing out the fact that missed field goal aside, it was a solid drive by Daniels and the Commanders. 2 third down conversions and smart decisions by Jaden Daniels. Got the ball out quickly when feeling pressure. And on 3rd down and 6, knowing he was in field goal range. And I do appreciate that. I feel like that it's a lot of the little nuanced things, the very minute details that Jaden Daniels displayed yesterday in that game that makes me very encouraged about his future for this team. His game last night wasn't exciting, but I have 2 more E words for you: efficient and very encouraging. I'm telling you, because even just that 3rd down play right there where it was incomplete, but the fact that he knew pressure was coming, he remembered that we're in field goal range. I cannot take a sack here. So it was just better to just throw an inaccurate pass and get it out of his hands than to take a sack there. We ended up missing the field goal anyway, but just imagine if we actually had a competent kicker where Jaden Daniels saves the field goal range that we were in with that incomplete pass, and then now we're able to make a field goal and gain 3 points because of it. So Jaden Daniels, a lot of small, minute detail, and that was not the only time he did something to keep us in field goal range or to get us close into field goal range deliberately yesterday in that game. So we're gonna get there. So next up, second drive, he was efficient again, but of course the thing that most people noticed and are talking about was that first keeper that he did. He took it for 13 yards, and he looked so quick. He looked so fast. He looked so agile, man. And shouts out to Cliff Kingsbury, man, because I know he's going to dial up Jaden Daniels to run a lot. I know that we want to keep him healthy, and granted, we're about to talk about it now, how he needs to avoid taking hit, slide, and get out of bounds and things like that. We're going to talk about that very soon. But at the same time, man, don't stop the gift that he has, man. And he even said it after the game in his press conference. He was like, God gave me a gift. I do need to be better with it, though, and, you know, show more caution and start to slide and get out of bounds more, take less hits and things like that. But at the end of the day, man, it is a gift, and we need to utilize that. There's a reason that he went 2nd overall. Now, I feel like even if he was just a pure pocket passer quarterback, even with the way how efficient he is from the pocket, then maybe he's still a high 1st round draft pick. But those legs are why he got that extra oomph to him to where you take him 2nd overall. And there's no reason to stifle his greatness in that way. Shouts out to Grant Paulson. I completely agree. He said that it's his superpower. Don't tell Superman to not wear his cape. No reason not to use that strength. I understand that you want to keep him healthy, but man, at the end of the day, you got to let that kid run every now and then. And I think Cliff Kingsbury will. He's shown it with the read option last week with the touchdown where Jaden Daniels pretty much walked into the end zone. And then right there on that 13-yard keeper where I'm not even exactly sure if it was a designed run. I think it was just true read option. He could have handed the ball off to the running back. He saw, okay, maybe if I disguise handoff to the running back and I keep it, I can get some yards. And that's what ended up happening. And so that was like his real first contact at a preseason. I'm not sure if people really noticed that or thought about it, but that was the first time Jaden Daniels has technically been really hit so far. I mean, there was sometimes, I remember like even the Dyami Brown deep bomb last week that he did get hit while throwing it, but that was like his first tackle taken all the way down to the ground, ball in play type of situation. And so, man, good run again. Did not get out of bounds, did not slide, but I'll take the gain of 13. And speaking of not getting out of bounds and sliding, if y'all watched that clip over again, maybe some of y'all saw it live, but Dan Quinn was clearly on the sideline, like telling Jaden Daniels get down afterwards. He was clearly, he ran up to him from the sidelines and was like, you could tell he was talking to him and like telling him, hey man, chill out. We need you long term, man. We don't want you to just be great in this preseason game. We don't want you to just be great in this rookie season. We need you great long term. Dan Quinn literally said that in a press conference literally just a couple of days ago. I believe it was after or before. It may have been before that joint practice against the Dolphins. But you could just see Dan Quinn on footage on TV telling him like, hey man, chill out. And I don't remember the coach that was beside him laughing, but there was a coach next to Dan Quinn laughing because the way that Jaden Daniels even replied was really funny. Because first of all, after Jaden Daniels got tackled, he immediately beelined his vision to Dan Quinn like, oh, I already know I'm about to catch it. Where is he? Before he even fully gets off the ground, he's like, where's Dan Quinn? Dan Quinn immediately, hey, Jaden Daniels, you don't gotta look far. Dan Quinn is on the way. And so they make eye contact. You can see Dan Quinn already talking to him, chewing him out before Jaden Daniels even fully gets off the ground. And then, but I love the fact that, there's a side of it that you definitely want to make sure that he's receiving the coaching, but I like the confidence, like the certain oomph that he has to him, to where like after he got up, he was like, man, I got you, man. You good? Like, hey, I'm good. I'm gonna chill out. That's my bad. And then even later, he turned around kind of smiling and laughing and then brushed off his shoulders like that wasn't nothing. You know what I'm saying? So Jaden Daniels just has, I can just every week, I'm just loving the pick even more and more, because I already knew he would be a good player, but I'm really big on personalities when it comes to my favorite players. It doesn't exactly matter how efficient you are, how great you are, if you're a future Hall of Famer. I personally gravitate towards certain personalities. Jaden Daniels is showing me some of that personality that I gravitate towards, man. He's starting to give me a little bit of my Anthony Edwards that I have in the NBA. Loving that right there. And then also, just to finish up just his overall day, on the day specifically, he finished 10 of 12 for 78 yards passing. He picked up 5 first downs, converted, I believe, 3 third downs, and he gave us a chance to score on all of those drives. The kicker just, Riley Patterson was selling. But overall, he had an 83.3 completion rate last night, 91 total yards, including that 13-yard run, and a 93.8 passer rating. Not bad at all. Very efficient. And again, at least one of those incompletions was a deliberate, I need to get this ball out of my hands so we can stay in field goal range. So if we were talking about like a true completion percentage, it's probably even a little bit higher than that. Like, I truly believe he got rid of that ball on purpose, knowing the situation. That was situational awareness. But overall, because that's it for him for the preseason. He did 1 drive against the Jets, 2 against the Dolphins. I'm not expecting him to get any in that third preseason game, especially since we've seen, again, like I said before the intro video, we've seen both sides of Jaden Daniels. We've seen the explosive ability to throw the ball deep down the field, to change a play at the line of scrimmage. Cliff Kingsbury called in a certain play. I don't remember if it was a run play or a screen play or whatever like that, but he audibled out of that into that Diami Deep Brown last week. This week, he just stayed on schedule. Cliff Kingsbury, all right, yes, sir. I got you. I'm going to just stick to the plan this time. I'm going to run what you want to run. We're going to keep it efficient. We're going to keep it quick, up-tempo, and, short passing game. And we're going to be accurate and on time to allow receivers to get yards after catching, things like that. Allow them to show what they can do. This isn't just about me. Let me just stay on schedule, show what Cliff Kingsbury has in his bag, show what these offensive linemen can do and what these receivers can do and all of that type of stuff. So I appreciate that. So, through 3 drives in 2 preseason games, he was 12 of 15, 80%, 123 passing yards, 8.2 yards per attempt, 16 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. But most importantly, no sacks, no turnovers, and was really never in danger of having any of those. Like, even when the offensive line, and we still don't technically have our starting left tackle out there, but against the Jets, we only had like 2 or 3 starting offensive linemen out there. And it just seems like, he's gotten hit throwing the ball sometimes, but he's done a great job of getting the ball out of his hands very quickly, to the point that he's never really been in danger of a sack. And he's also, I don't remember a time he's ever thrown the ball in harm's way to where we even thought he may get a turnover. And so I love that, man. I really, really love that. Shouts out to John Kahn, because he brings up a great point. Daniels was only scheduled to play 2 series, so you would have to think that his day was done after that second one. We already knew that ahead of time. But even though he had no touchdown, good execution by Jaden Daniels. Oh, yeah, his legs helped a lot too, man. Good little breakdown there. Then you have Linnell. He said Washington gave up the 2nd most sacks in the NFL last year. Running game through 2 games has helped that out. Jaden Daniels helps that by understanding where pressure is coming from pre-snap as well. Also gets the ball out on time, all the time. Quarterbacking one-on-one from his preseason, completely agree there. And then Louis Riddick even was watching the game and shouted him out. He said Jaden Daniels plays with such poise and control, like the up-tempo and change of pace approach they are using, it fits them. Again, you can tell they came in with two different game plans. Against the Jets, a certain game plan, let him scan the field, let him do his own thing, work his own magic, but it was heavily run-based. And then this second game against the Dolphins, it was more so, I mean, we still ran the ball quite a bit, but it was more so Jaden Daniels, we're just going to dink and dunk with you, and that's going to be like an extension of the run game, essentially. Really fast, up-tempo, done a lot of defense to get really set and comfortable and allow Jaden Daniels to pick them apart, basically. And I like both. I like both strategies a lot. And also want to point out the fact that play action will be a big part of this offense, man, which I love. CJ Stroud's elite rookie season last year was heavily play action based. If you look up his stats with play action versus when he didn't do play action, the play action stats were like elite in comparison. Like he ate off of the fact that he had play action in his offense last year. So I'm very happy that Cliff Kingsbury has shown us that he will do that a lot with Jaden Daniels. Like, for example, on that John Bates first down catch where he was wide open, Jaden Daniels faked the handoff, which froze the linebacker just long enough to give Jaden Daniels enough room to squeeze the ball right over his head to John Bates for a wide open first down. And of course, John Bates just fell down immediately after catching the ball. I mean, it seems like he's literally against yards after catch. Like, if he gets yards after catch, he'll have to do push-ups or something like that, the way he fell down. It was crazy. But either way, that play happened because of a great play action fake from Jaden Daniels, and then the touch and the accuracy to get it over the linebacker's head in front of any of the other DBs right in that perfect window. It was beautiful. And then also, even just beyond that, shouts out to better_days, but he spells days as D-A-I-S-E. Shouts out to him on Twitter because he brings up a great point. Jaden Daniels has yaccuracy, not just accuracy, but yaccuracy. He puts the ball in the proper place for the receiver to get more yards afterwards. That's going to be big time for this offense in general. I know Terry McLaurin and all of those other receivers are going to love that because, for example, in that Terry McLaurin play where he caught the ball really quickly underneath, that was very accurate and it was very on time. That was the reason that Terry McLaurin was able to work around the defensive back and get as many yards after catch as he did. So shouts out to Jaden Daniels. He will enable these wide receivers to be as great as they possibly can. He will definitely elevate the play of the receivers around him for sure. He's going to make receivers better, and that's one of the main things you need to do if you're a quarterback. But man, I'm telling you, man, this Commanders offense, shouts out to Mason Kinahan, I completely agree, is going to be top 5 in tempo this year easily. Like, it's gotta be, man. You just saw that example. We didn't show it against the Jets, but we showed it against the Dolphins that we're going to be a top 5 tempo offense. We're gonna run hurry up a lot. It's gonna be very akin to what Jaden Daniels is doing for LSU. I'm not gonna lie. Now, if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, that's what I do. That's what he's best at. That's his natural element. That's where he's comfortable. Let him do that. And defenses hate it. Now, don't abuse it to where, like, you're on the field, you're off the field immediately, and our defense is getting more and more fatigued as the game goes on because they're out there on the field a lot. But hey, man, when you need to, like 2-minute offense and stuff like that, I can see Jaden Daniels eating in those elements, in those situations. 2-minute offense at the end of the game, 4-minute offense and things like that. I can see him killing it. I can see those being the times where we're like, man, we really got a guy, man, like about to shed a tear type of thing, just carving up defenses. That's his element right there. And so again, overall, Jaden Daniels' day, not very exciting, but very encouraging and efficient. I care about those E words way more, but I'm pretty sure the excitement is going to come, especially like we're going to talk about it soon when we talk about Jeff Driscoll. But like, I mean, whenever Cliff Kingsbury draws up these elite play design plays, these quarterback keepers where the quarterback is supposed to run with the ball. We know this before we even snap the ball. Jeff Driscoll is able to get like 40 plus yards out of them. Jaden Daniels will be taking those runs to the house. He's way faster and more agile than Jeff Driscoll. So just imagine what Jaden Daniels is going to do with those play calls. So the excitement is going to come. And you saw the De'Ami Brown deep ball that he audible to have that much confidence to be like, nah, I don't like that play. I'm going to throw this deep ball here. De'Ami Brown, great catch, great concentration, over the shoulder catch and things like that. But I mean, no separation. That was just like a perfectly placed ball. If he throws that a millisecond later, if he throws that with the slightest ounce of less strength in the throw, that's not a completion. I mean, the margins was so small there. The margin of error was just so small. So that we're going to be exciting. Don't worry about that. But I love the fact that he showed efficiency, because that comes before being exciting. Exciting is nice, but that's the cherry on top. That's the icing. That's not the main ingredients. I love the efficiency. That's the main ingredients, and we saw a lot of that. And then shouts out to Sam48 before we move on from the Jaden Daniels part of this video. He said Jaden Daniels checked a lot of boxes this preseason. Great handle on scheme. Very important. He understands this offense. You never saw plays. I don't think y'all understand how beautiful that is. That Jaden Daniels, we never like detected, oh man, that didn't seem like he knew that play call. He didn't understand where that guy was going. You know what I'm saying? We didn't really feel that. Also, quick passing, love that. Deep ball, we saw that. Ball placement, of course. Zone read keepers, love that. Rapport with Terry and Diami. We're going to talk about that when we get to the receiver part of this video, because he clearly has rapport with those two. Everybody else is kind of up in the air, but Terry and Diami, right now, I would argue those are the two receivers that are the highest on the depth chart, at least chemistry with Jaden Daniels wise. Zach Ertz, when he's on the field, is his favorite target, but receiver room specifically, Terry and Diami got it. He also avoided sacks and he showed swagger. I completely agree. I mean, he's just always out there having fun and smiling and laughing and things like that. And I know the players have to gravitate around that, because I would love to play for a quarterback like Jaden Daniels with a personality like that. Personality matters so much. Confidence, poise, but also having a little bit of fun, man. That's big time, man. And then moving on to the other quarterbacks that played, especially Jeff Driscoll, or how I was calling him during the live stream, Jeff Bixel, because that boy was running, man. Serge the Shooter brought up a good point. What if I told you a Commanders quarterback would have a 43-yard run last night, but then what if I told you it would be Jeff Driscoll? I'm telling you, man, that boy Jeff Bixel, man, he wasn't playing with y'all. And just a reminder that if that were Jaden Daniels on that run, that's to the house. So if anything, the biggest takeaway I have from those plays where Jeff Driscoll keeps running for a bunch of yards is the fact that, like, Cliff Kingsbury looks like he's cooking. Like the one against the Jets was like a beautiful play design where it was like a situation where they showed these certain plays and then the defense adjusted, so they were able to run a counter punch, which allowed Jeff Driscoll to get a bunch of yards. So just know Cliff Kingsbury is adapting throughout the game, all of that type of stuff. I'm really excited about that. Also, man, that boy looked pretty good out there. I'm not gonna lie. Outside of the bad vision that he had at times, because Jeff Driscoll did miss on, I think it was John Bates, or no, it was Ben Sinnott. There was one play where Ben Sinnott was like wide open underneath, and Jeff Driscoll tried to attempt like a deep shot, which he ended up not completing because it was well covered. So outside of the bad vision at times, he was not perfect. A lot of people acting like he just had like this great game. He was good, not necessarily great. But the point is, like, the debate while we're here, is he quarterback 2? Should he be above Marcus Mariota in the depth chart? I feel like this regime is not going to just immediately give up Marcus Mariota's number 2 spot to Jeff Driscoll while Marcus Mariota's been hurt. Jeff Driscoll has looked good in preseason games, but it's not like he's been perfect. So I don't think it's been enough, but let me know how y'all feel about that. But if he is, can we just go ahead and take that number 0 from Marcus Mariota? Regardless, if Jeff Driscoll's the number 2 quarterback or not, don't care. Take that number 0 from Marcus Mariota. That deserves to go up to a guy like Mike Sainristil, who still to this very day is sharing the exact same number 2 number as Diami Brown. It makes 0 sense, and number 0 is too cold of a number for Marcus Mariota to be hogging it, man. Give that to Mike Sainristil. We're going to talk about him eventually in this video. That guy is a certified dog. I have him competing for Defensive Rookie of the Year easily, man. I do. I don't necessarily see him winning it, because being a slot corner and winning Defensive Rookie of the Year, it almost feels impossible, especially with all of these edge rushers. They can go out there and get sacks, and when you're a slot corner, I mean, people are just going to avoid throwing the ball your way if you're that good. You're not going to have any real stats, and maybe your Pro Football Focus grade is elite, somewhere in the high 80s, lower 90s or something like that. But statistically, you're not going to really be able to do much, man. People are just going to avoid you on the defense. You can't really avoid the edge rusher. So edge rushers are going to go out there. Jared Verse and Latu, and those guys, even Chop Robinson showed how he embarrassed Trent Scott. Those guys are going to be able to put up stats that really pop on screen, be household names. So I'm rooting for you, Mike Sanders, still, but it's going to be hard to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, to win any really awards as a slot corner, especially since people more so care about outside corners. But Mike Sanders still is already the best corner on this team. You can maybe even make an argument for the best defensive back. I mean, the whole secondary, but we're going to get there later. But out of the way, moving on to Trace McSorley. Now, first of all, first play, fumble snap, and then the very next play, a sack. So you already knew how this day was going to go for him. Now, granted, we do got to show him a little bit of sympathy, because this guy, I mean, he didn't even really get a chance to practice in that joint practice against the Jets, and that was his first day. Like, Dan Quinn and McSorley first met each other for the very first time ever at the beginning of that joint practice. Like, that was their first time ever shaking hands or anything like that. So you could tell that Trace McSorley literally just got here. He had that joint practice against the Jets where he barely even got to get any snaps, to the point that I even pointed it out after practice. He stayed late after practice just to rehearse a couple of things. Like, man, I still need help. I got a preseason game in a couple of days. And then he went out there in the preseason game and looked like he just got here. Now, granted, even when we signed him, I knew he wasn't a good quarterback. But, I mean, a lot of that, man, you got to cut him a little slack. That was definitely like he just got here. No, he just got here. But, man, golly, even so, it still wasn't even like to that standard. Even if you lower your expectations, it wasn't very good. A lot of balls were behind people. He started to get a little bit more accurate as the day went on. But then the final play of the game, he threw it behind the receiver, and it should have been caught. But, I mean, he put that receiver in a bad situation. Definitely should have been caught. Definitely. If you're trying to make this team, you need to catch that game-tying touchdown. But out of the way, that was just a bad placed ball. McSorley showed why he was available until Marcus Mariota and Sam Hartman both got hurt. If either one of those guys plays in this preseason game, we don't even sign McSorley. This is not a signing to where we're hoping that, he could turn into something or anything like that. We literally just needed a third quarterback to go out there so that we can evaluate our players. Speaking of that, John Kahn brings up a great point. McSorley was in a tough spot, just got here, can't expect a whole lot, but at the same time, it also makes it hard to evaluate some of the receivers with as bad as he was. The tight ends struggling, man. Everybody involved in the passing game, especially in that fourth quarter, McSorley was so bad that we don't really even know what takeaways we could take from the receivers and the tight ends and those guys in the passing game trying to receive the ball, because, I mean, what can you do with the information that you have? McSorley was selling them a lot of the time, but have to judge the process with them more than results at this point. Are they getting open? All of that type of stuff. So even outside of the McSorley trash that we were having to witness, you can still try to evaluate these guys off of different reference points. Again, this is not just what have you done in the 2 preseason games. It also includes, like, your overall grade includes, like, homework as well. What have you been doing in practices? It's not just about tests and projects. What have you been doing all throughout this offseason? But at the same time, it would have been nice if McSorley could have at least been good enough to allow us to properly evaluate the receivers and tight ends when he was out there. Now, moving on to the running backs, that boy Brian Robinson was looking explosive, man. You saw the vision. You saw the patience. He looks like a better running back. I would even dare to say that he looked a little faster as well, man. And shouts out to the run blocking, too. The run blocking by the offensive line looked really, really good, man. Maybe not all of the time. Like, we had a couple of runs for only like 1-2 yards. But overall, that run blocking from the offensive line, the pass blocking, I'm still a little concerned about. But the run blocking, I'm very sure of. I know we're going to be good there, man. Shouts out to Brian Robinson. Of course, there was one play where he ran, good vision, made some cuts. John Bates had a ridiculously great block on one of those plays. John Bates was an elite blocking tight end in that preseason game, but specifically on one of those Brian Robinson runs, John Bates had an elite block, which allowed Brian Robinson to get all the running yards that he got on that play. He was literally the catalyst for Brian Robinson getting all of those yards. Also, shouts out to Michael Wiley, because he's been stacking consecutive now 2 good preseason performances, back-to-back good games, making plays, making guys miss and things like that, which takes me to the point that Jeremy McNichols and Michael Wiley were both getting carries before Chris Rodriguez was even in the game. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Does that seem like Chris Rodriguez is not making the roster? Now, outside of Brian Robinson and obviously Austin Eckler, I'm not gonna lie, Michael Wiley in the preseason looked the best. Now, I think Jeremy McNichols is probably still third on the depth chart, but Michael Wiley looked the best out of everybody else outside of the top 2 running backs. I'm not gonna lie. And I don't know, man, Chris Rodriguez, maybe they've just forgotten about him. I don't know. Because, I mean, the fact that he didn't get carries until so late, man, it was crazy. Like, when you were watching that game, it looked like Jeremy McNichols and Michael Wiley were competing for that third running back spot. And then Chris Rodriguez just kind of came out a little bit later just to kind of participate. He just, no, we just needed bodies out there. They almost treated him like how they basically treated Trace McSorley at quarterback almost, it felt like. Now, moving on to the wide receivers, Terry McLaurin, love what I saw from him. He was getting open quite a bit last night. And then you also saw, again, like we talked about earlier, Jaden Daniels getting the ball out quickly and on target, allowing Terry McLaurin to get some yards after the catch. And I mean, it's not like even if Jaden Daniels threw me that ball, I'll be able to get yards after the catch. That was something Terry McLaurin made shake. Now, Jaden Daniels set him up to do it. Without the Jaden Daniels accuracy and timing, Terry McLaurin isn't even allowed to do that. But Jaden Daniels set him up to do it. Terry McLaurin had to do the rest of the work, and he got some great yards after catch on that play. And I want to bring this back to the fact that Terry McLaurin has emphasized this all offseason, even going all the way back to voluntary OTAs way earlier in the summer. He's talked about repeatedly. I've given you the clips. I've told you about it every time he's mentioned it this offseason, that he's really trying to work on his yards after catch, and you saw that on display in that preseason game. So I love it when guys say they're going to work on something, and then they work on it, and then you see the results very soon. We're not even in the regular season yet. You're already seeing his yards after catch ability. I mean, he was specifically working on like stiff arm drills, one of those practices, I think, in voluntary OTAs. He's been very serious about that. So you're starting to see the fruits of his labor there. But Terry McLaurin, dog, #1 wide receiver. But hey, man, Jamin Brown definitely looks like wide receiver too. At least chemistry with Jaden Daniels wise. If you're trying to separate these receivers to see who's the best, not exactly sure yet there. But chemistry with Jaden Daniels, Jamin Brown is definitely #2. He has great rapport with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels clearly shows trust in him. And then Jahan Dotson, maybe I got to go look at that game again, but I noticed him out there with the starters, but I felt like he was only targeted once, and I believe he dropped it. So, man, hey, we got a lot of catching up to do there, Jahan. We came into this preseason game like, man, you got some catching up to do, and we leave the preseason game with, I mean, the gap may have even gotten bigger now. You got a lot of catching up to do right now. But, hey, shouts out to Luke McCaffrey, our third-round pick, wide receiver. Some people are saying that he may be a bust or something already. I don't know where that's coming from. I was seeing some of that in the live chat. I was just flabbergasted. I was like, where are we getting this from? First of all, y'all watching the same game as me, because people were saying that after he had that really big catch for a 21-yard gain that was pretty contested. He went up there and snagged it, showed great hands there. And then when he was out there with the backups of the backups, when we got later into the game, he was getting open and making good catches later as well. But my most important thing was he was getting open. Like, I mean, it was like 3 yards of separation from the guy that was covering him and things like that. So we're seeing signs. And then Martavis Bryant-wise, I didn't really notice him as a receiver, but one of those Trace McSorley picks, shouts out to Martavis for forcing the fumble on the DB that had the interception and got us the ball back. So heads up play from Martavis Bryant. Outside of that, I mean, his first target of the preseason, he drew an illegal contact. So that's a positive in his favor. I was trying to see if I could pinpoint Martavis Bryant throughout that preseason game, but he didn't really stand out much outside of those 2 plays. But those are still positive plays. Forcing an illegal contact on a DB, and then after McSorley throws an interception, to go and hustle and force a fumble on the DB and get the ball back for the offense. That's big time. Coaches definitely notice those type of things. And then lastly, Mitchell Tinsley, you're up out of here. Kazma Allen, you're gone too, but we're going to more so talk about you on the special teams part. But Mitchell Tinsley, man, again, like I mentioned earlier, Trace McSorley did set you up for failure by throwing that pass behind you. But if it touches both of your hands and it's a potentially game-tying touchdown and you're trying to make this roster the final play of the game, you're going against the 4th stringers of the other team, you got to stand out. The only way you make this team is if you're going against 4th stringers, you got to look like a 3rd or 2nd stringer out there with 4th stringers. You need to stand out. You need to look like a god amongst men. And you did not stand out because you did not make that catch, and you got to make that catch. I mean, sometimes passes are thrown behind you. They're not always going to be perfectly accurate right in the middle of your numbers or right where you want them to be, where your hands are at, or things like that. It's not always going to be perfect. And if you're as a receiver, You got to catch everything that touches your hands, man. Plain and simple. So Mitchell Tinsley, man, it's been fun. I hate to hear it. I hate to see it because he has been making plays throughout the offseason. But that pretty much sealed his fate right there, dropping that touchdown catch. And it sucks, too, because I know, like, as a player, after he dropped that, he already has to know what I'm saying, that's pretty much a wrap for him, at least this season. Pretty sure he'll come back and compete next year in training camp and things like that. But it's definitely a wrap. 53-man roster-wise, I already didn't think he would make it. It was already looking bad for him, but that just pretty much sealed his fate. Pretty much just gift wrapped him off the team. We'll see if he makes the practice squad or whatever. Moving on to the tight ends, man. Shouts out to John Bates. First of all, just to get the bat out the way again, just the fact that he'll catch the ball and just immediately fall down, man, is a little annoying. Like, golly, man, you're big. You're bigger than these DBs. Try to run somebody over and at least get an extra 2-3 yards. Again, that Jaden Daniels play action where the linebacker bit on the play action, he was able to deliver the ball to John Bates over the linebacker's head. I mean, why do you got to fall immediately like that? Are you trying to avoid getting hurt? I don't know what that was. But outside of that, John Bates blocking-wise, I would say he showed dominance. I would use the word dominance at times last night, man. I mean, and that's going to be coveted more in Cliff Kingsbury's offense than most other offenses, man. Him being able to block that well and be able to at least catch the ball while open. He's not going to give you yards after catch or anything like that, but at least be able to catch the ball while open. That's going to be huge for this offense because you're going to get tired of him blocking against you. You're going to start to acknowledge him as a blocking tight end, and then he's randomly going to leak out underneath somewhere in the flat or right in the middle of the field, like after that play action play against the Dolphins, and just be wide open and make a catch that just kills your defense. Like, it's third and short out of nowhere. John Bates is the one getting the first down. That has to be exhausting physically and mentally. Like, man, I thought this guy was only good at blocking. I mean, he may not necessarily be a true dual threat tight end, but he could at least catch the ball out of the backfield when he's open. And then Ben Sinnott, man, he's always going to make a play, dog. He's always going to get some yards after catch, man. You can depend on that. It was only a matter of time in that preseason game before he did it, man. Shouts out to him for getting a first down there. Mr. Yards after catch himself, the complete antithesis to John Bates in the receiving game. And then again, like I said earlier, there was that play where Jeff Driscoll attempted a deep shot. Ben Sinnott was wide open underneath for a first down. So Ben Sinnott really should have had at least 2 catches. So just because he only had 1 catch, don't think that was his fault. He was open other times, but Jeff Driscoll just didn't see him. That's why I'm saying that even though Jeff Driscoll looks really good, really go back and look at the tape, he did make some mistakes by not seeing some receivers that were open at times. But there's a reason that he's like a third-string quarterback right now. You can maybe make the argument that he should be quarterback 2 behind Jaden Daniels. There's a reason he's not in any sort of competition for quarterback 1. And then Cole Turner. Step into my office, man. Turn the lights off. We got a lamp only on you. It's interrogation time. What's going on, man? I mean, how dare you not catch a pass as it slips through your hands, which results into an interception? You sold McSorley just like you sold my boy Jaden Daniels in that joint practice against the Dolphins. I don't know if it's a Dolphins thing, if you're just scared of them or something like that. But again, for Jaden Daniels' situation against the Dolphins in that joint practice, remember Jaden Daniels threw 2 interceptions. None of them were his fault. One of them, Terry McLaurin, slipped completely. Kendall Fuller was just chilling there waiting for the ball to come to him, basically. No receiver and nobody else in life had a chance of stopping Kendall Fuller from getting that interception. That was completely on Terry McLaurin slipping. The other one was Cole Turner. Jaden Daniels threw it right to his numbers, right in his hands. He got hit so hard that he ended up, letting the ball go up in the air and then ended up getting intercepted. And then you're pretty much doing the same thing to Trace McSorley. Now, Trace McSorley, granted, he did do a fair share of selling himself for the receivers and tight ends, so maybe Cole Turner was trying to get revenge on him. I don't know. But either way, you definitely sold McSorley right there, man. Ball goes right through your hands for an interception, and I believe that was the play where Martavis Bryant forced the fumble to get the ball back for the offense. But, God, man, come on, man. They picked you over my dog, Armani Rogers. My boy that I was rooting for, probably one of the hardest people that I wanted to win this team, that wanted to make this team out of anybody. Again, my top 3 guys that I was most intrigued by, outside of Jaden Daniels coming into this training camp, were Armani Rogers, Jeremy Chin, and Tyler Owens. Jeremy Chin, steady. You know, he's been making plays. You know, he's just starting strong safety, not to worry about him. Tyler Owens, I'm loving the love that he's been getting lately. We're going to talk about him, especially when we get to the safety group. But my boy Armani Rogers was my guy at tight end. I have the same feeling about Armani Rogers at tight end as I had about Jordan Mailata at tackle coming out of the draft from the rugby league that he came from a different country or something like that. Now look at him. He's a Pro Bowl tackle for the Eagles, franchise tackle and everything like that. I have that same feeling about Armani Rogers at tight end, and they cut that for you, and you're out here not making contested catches, which makes no sense. Now granted, you've improved as a blocker, but the one thing, the one trait, you're when in doubt, you know Cole Turner's going to do this, is contested catches. That is your thing. And you're out here selling Jaden Daniels in joint practice and then McSorley in the preseason game. I'm not liking that. Cole Turner, I'm going to need you to step it up. It doesn't mean I'm rooting against you because they picked you over Armani Rogers. If anything, that means I'm rooting for you more. Because I'm like, okay, they had to pick you over Armani Rogers for a reason. Please show me why they did. We need you to be that great fourth tight end. I'm very confident in what Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, and John Bates can do. And if they end up keeping 4 tight ends, I'm going to need more from you, man. I really do. There's just no excuse not to catch these passes that are going through y'all hands, man. Especially that when that's the main thing you do. He's improved as a blocker, but he's not known for his blocking. That was the reason he struggled to get on the field these past couple of years. So we'll see what happens there. Offensive line wise, man, have a lot of interesting updates there, man, because the offensive line, you know, we saw some good, we saw some bad, especially starting with, let's just go ahead and get the bad out the way, man. Andrew Wiley, you can tell, man, that he hasn't practiced much this offseason, dog. He had a false start at one point, and then he erased the third down conversion with a holding penalty. Now, granted, we may not have even converted that third down if he didn't hold, but it would be nice if you didn't have to hold to make that block. How about you just make the block, man? How about you show some mobility to slide over to the left and get to that linebacker before he's already past you and things like that, man? Come on, dog. 2 penalties off rip with the starters. The starters were only out there for 2 drives, and you already found a way to get a false start and a holding penalty. That is not good at all, man. We got to be better. And John Kahn pointed out the fact that false starts have been a problem all summer. And it's not even just an Andrew Wiley thing, because again, he's barely practiced this offseason, so you can't blame him for all of the other ones from earlier this summer. But boy, we got to get those penalties under wraps. Now, I do want to point out the fact that, first of all, before we even get into Andrew Wiley, Dan Quinn even talked about the penalties and how many times they've had penalties in practice and things like that. And he said that basically the same penalty issues that we've seen in games, we've basically been seeing them throughout training camp. He was asked on how they are learning from penalties in training camp. He said, quote, "Yeah, and I think what you want to avoid is pre-snap and the post-snap penalties, because those can really come down to just discipline. Poise or pre-snap of an offsides or a false start. If there's a combative penalty, then you can coach from that and teach from that. Who's holding or hands to the face or pass interference or whatever you know might have looked like. So it's the combative ones that we want thrown to see where we go from there. The ones where we lack discipline, those are the ones we know we have to get rid of from our game. A false start, a jumping off sides, or those can really hurt you. So knowing the 2 different types of penalties to go from, we understand the combative ones will happen, but the ones pre and post snap, those are the ones that just can't be a part of what we do. I completely agree. Dan Quinn, great quote. Those are 2 different types of penalties. And hey, granted, Andrew Wiley had both. He had the combative one with the holding, which you still got to work on because that just showed a lack of mobility. But the false start one, granted, he hasn't been out there, but hey, you were still here last year, dog. You know, it's different for Tyler Biadasz. He just got here this offseason. Now, granted, he's practiced way more than you this offseason, but he wasn't here last year. The right guard to the right of him and the left guard to the left of him, he has no prior chemistry with until he just signed here in March and started working with these guys in voluntary OTAs. That he has no prior chemistry with these guys. Andrew Wiley, you're a right tackle. The only chemistry you need is with the right guard to your left. You don't have another offensive lineman to your side, so what's the issue here? What is the issue here? Tyler Biadasz has to gain chemistry with 2 guys, both to his right and left. You only have 1 guy to your left, and you have rapport with him from playing with him all last season. And now, granted, I do want to point out the fact that him and Samuel Cosmi, I don't know what happened. I don't know why it took so long, but by the last 7-8 games, they finally got that chemistry down pat, and you never had to worry about that right side. Samuel Cosmi started to play like an all-pro towards that second half of the season, and then Andrew Wiley actually went from being terrible that first half of the season to actually pretty decent. You could argue even like an above like average. You can argue that he was like an average tackle. I wouldn't say great. I wouldn't even necessarily say good, but you know, serviceable. He wasn't bad the second half of the season. I'm not gonna lie, but he looked pretty bad at times in that preseason game. But again, this guy has barely practiced. I feel like that excuse does hold a little bit of merit. JP Finley brings up a good point. It's easy to jump on Wiley for 2 penalties on that drive. Keep in mind, he's been off of work for a while. Basically, only 2 padded practices before last night's game. He's getting back in the flow. Wasn't great last year, but wasn't heavily penalized either. So that's not even like an Andrew Wiley thing. Even when he was terrible last year, he wasn't a guy that was getting a lot of penalties. So that's just, you can tell he's rusty. He's just trying to get back into the flow of things. So I'm not expecting Andrew Wiley to be like a big penalty guy for us. But at the same time, man, this guy is still a veteran. We can't make excuses for him for the reasons I've already explained. Tyler Biadasz just got here. He's just starting center. He has a lot more responsibilities than Andrew Wiley has. And again, the guy to both his right and his left are new. Andrew Wiley, you don't have anybody new around you. You only have one guy next to you on the offensive line, and it's all pro Samuel Cosmi, who you have rapport with all from last year. I know you haven't practiced much this offseason, but it's still not much of an excuse, man, at all. I still expect way more from you, big dog. Way more, Andrew Wiley. We need you to be better, man. We're going to need that right tackle spot solidified, especially right now with the fact that the left tackle spot with Brandon Coleman still hurt. I'm not expecting him to go out there and play very well immediately. He's looked good in practice before he got hurt, but this guy as a rookie, third-round rookie, has barely practiced the past 2 weeks. Has barely practiced just overall throughout the entire offseason. He was only getting starting snaps for like a week before he got hurt, and now he's been out for like the past week or 2. But hey, man, shouts out to John Kahn for pointing this out. He said things to like on that drive. Jaden Daniels getting through his progressions timely, get the ball out before any issues, ball placement, vision, John Bass's blocking with a couple of catches, but penalties will kill you, and Andrew Wiley had 2, and that's like the biggest takeaway from his part on that drive. He blocked fairly well outside of those penalties, but those penalties literally killed drives. We probably maybe even go all the way down to score a touchdown if it weren't for that holding penalty, but it is what it is. Moving on to the rest of the offensive line. Chris Paul had a chance to show what he could do at right tackle again, and I wouldn't necessarily say that he was great, but he showed you flashes of why he was good, and you can maybe even make an argument that maybe he's a better tackle than he is a guard. Who knows? But at some point in the game, though, 2 plays in a row, the Dolphins blitzed corners at Chris Paul while he was at right tackle, and his lack of mobility showed. I'm not gonna lie, he wasn't terrible, but it wasn't necessarily good or impressive either. Like Samuel Cosmi with his mobility could pick those up very quickly and easily, whereas Chris Paul struggled a little bit. But that's his thing. He can block against like defensive linemen pretty well at guard and things like that, but when it comes to getting to that second level or having a pull or something like that, his lack of mobility really shows. I believe he even tripped over himself against the Jets last week in the preseason game. This guy has basically no mobility to his game, none at all. And then also there was like one play where Chris Paul just completely ignored like a defensive lineman and then went to the next level to block somebody else, and then I believe it was Trace McSorley. No, it was Jeff Driscoll. They ended up getting sacked for like a loss of 7 because of it. Like, thanks a lot, Chris Paul, for that one. I don't know what that one was. And then also Trent Scott, man. Now, again, I do want to emphasize the fact that, yeah, Chris Paul made a couple of mistakes, but overall, he was pretty good last night. So I definitely want to finish on a high note with him. But Chop Robinson killed Trent Scott, man. For that sack that he had on Jeff Driscoll, Trent Scott, I mean, he almost looks unplayable. I know Chop Robinson has a lot of potential to him, as a very high ceiling, but he's still a rookie, man. This is a rookie only in his second preseason game. And for you to get beat that bad, like, it wasn't just like he got beat terribly, like immediately, like just cooked. That's not good, Trent Scott. We can't see you. I mean, even as depth, even if like there's an injury, I'm very uncomfortable with Trent Scott having to go out there at any point. I mean, it just looks like Jaden Daniels will not be safe. If you go back and look at how Chop Robinson killed Trent Scott, just imagine that's Jaden Daniels back there in a regular season game going against like Brian Burns or Micah Parsons. That's food. That's food, Trent Scott. We can't have that. I'm very uncomfortable with Trent Scott making this team, especially after seeing that. And even in the joint practices against the Jets, man, he was getting cooked play after play by player after player, man. This guy can't block anybody, is what it seems. And then Braden Daniels wise, shouts out to him. He's putting together 2 consecutive good games in the preseason against the Jets last week and against the Dolphins last night. He's looked pretty good. I'm not going to lie. He's been doing his thing at right tackle. He was even at left guard a little bit, I believe, last night. He did a good job making some pull blocks. Now, that's a guy that has mobility. Unlike Chris Paul, this guy has mobility. He can move. He can go to the second level. He can pull and things like that. He showed physicality, all kinds of stuff, man. And even on that Allen fumble that we had, he did a good job of driving his man off the block. So even though it was a negative play for the offense, Braden Daniels looked good if you just isolate him. So he's showing what he can do. And then just to go back real quick, Samuel Cosmi, can't forget about him. He looked like an all-pro guard, like the one like he's destined to be at times in that preseason game last night, man. On that De'Ami Brown screen specifically, he showed his rare traits to get out there and give him a lead block to pave the way for more yards than De'Ami Brown should have really even gotten. Like Samuel Cosmi, his mobility, his ability to get out there, his athleticism to get to that second level, to be a lead blocker on a screen, man, that's unprecedented. Only a handful of guards in the NFL could even do what Samuel Cosmi did on that play. So I'm telling you, all pro season loading, and you saw it there, so I'm really excited about that. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, shouts out to Serge the Shooter because he brings up a great point. Loving the run defense from this unit, starting line and running backs for the Miami Dolphins, whereas our front seven only had 2 starters out there, Frankie Louisville and Dorrance Armstrong. The rest of the front seven was just sitting either injuries or just like veteran day off. They didn't want to put them in harm's way and things like that. And again, you had the starting Dolphins offensive line and their starting running back. So shouts out to the front seven for doing what they did with mostly backups out there. But Mike Sanders still is a starter, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him a part of the front seven. It seemed like we had the starting secondary out there, but the front seven was mostly backup. So I'm impressed with what they did. Also, shouts out to Zach Selby because I agree with this as well. I love the way the defense flies to the ball. Now, granted, tackling is definitely a problem right now, but at least they're flying. At least there's no hesitation. They're missing. When they do miss, they're missing with confidence, I guess. Like, they're flying. They're at least running to do it. But nevertheless, they are missing. But the one positive you can't take away is that Joe Wood Jr. has clearly changed the mentality of his defense. They are flying, and they are going out there really trying to hit people as hard as they can. They're moving at the very least. Now, going on to the defensive line side of the ball again, just to let you know, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne were not out there. Neither was Cleveland Farrell. No Dante Fowler, no nothing. Dorrance Armstrong was the only starting edge rusher out there, only starting defensive lineman, period. So opposite of him, they had KJ Henry out there with the starting defensive line, and that surprised me a little bit because this regime did not draft KJ Henry, even though he is a veteran. Javonte Jean-Baptiste is a rookie, but he was drafted specifically by this regime in the 7th round. And from what I've heard this offseason, I thought Javonte Jean-Baptiste may be ahead of KJ Henry on the depth chart, but apparently KJ Henry is ahead of him on the depth chart, which is good because I've heard good things about Javonte Jean-Baptiste. And if KJ Henry looks better than him, then that's really solid depth in the edge rusher position. Now, of course, the star of the show, Jamin Davis, got to talk about him. Before we even get to the fumble that he caused on the strip sack, even before then, he patted down a pass that the quarterback was going out on a bootleg, and Jamin Davis did a good job timing his leap to go up there and knock the ball down, like a very athletic play in space. Like everybody can't do that. Not many edge rushers can do that. Not many even off-ball linebackers can do that. I mean, just if we're considering him a defensive lineman, there are not a lot of defensive linemen that could have made the play that he made right there. So that was already very impressive. And then soon after that, you could argue Jamin Davis made the defensive play of the game. Because now, granted, he still doesn't have an ounce of bend to him. That's his biggest weakness right now. Maybe we could develop that, but that just kind of seems like one of those things, you have it or you don't. But man, he showed great, and dare I say, nuanced ability with that pass rush that he had to get the strip sack. I mean, he like literally, again, no bend, but great agility. He like got great burst off of the ball when the ball was snapped, which made the tackle kick step a little bit more than he probably should have. He took advantage of that, put his foot in the ground, juked back inside, and was able to get right past them for the strip sack, man. Very impressive play. And again, the fact that it looked like a veteran-like play for a guy that, I mean, is still learning the position, very new and raw at the position. That's very encouraging for him, man. Very encouraging. Shouts out to Nick Atrich for pointing this out. He said Jamin Davis with an elite rep at edge. I agree. Hand in the ground, decent jump, inside step, get to the quarterback and force the ball out. Great play from them, man. That was a very explosive, high-level play there. DC Sports Experience said Jamin Davis's athleticism can definitely translate the pass rush. Nice to see. I completely agree there as well. And shouts out to David Harris. comparison. He said first takeaway of the preseason for the Washington Commanders. I didn't even notice that. I didn't even pay attention to the fact that that was our first turnover of the entire preseason so far through 2 games. It comes on a strip sack by Jamin Davis, recovered by Andre Jones Jr. Results in a quick 3-and-out by the offense, but the Dolphins have to reset at their own 31 after driving inside the red zone before the fumble, and that is a very important part of like context to that whole situation. Remember that whole drive, they're just killing us. They went all the way from their own side of the field all the way to ours. They're easily in field goal range. That strip sack got them out of field goal range. Now, granted, our offense didn't do nothing with it, but at least Jamin Davis gave our offense the opportunity to punt to put the Dolphins all the way back on their side of the field again. So that was a very big play. Like if that were in a real game scenario, that's potentially a game-changing play right there. Shouts out to John Kahn because he pointed out the fact that Jamin Davis' strip sack, he looked more comfortable off the snap that time. Good move on the inside to get free. He told John Kahn recently that he's piecing it together. Had to get used to coming off of the line and then learning to read a tackle sets. It takes time. Nice play. You can see he's learning, and that's very encouraging. When you're seeing signs of improvement, that is a big time for a guy making a position change. So Jamin Davis, don't give up on him just yet. Dan Quinn, even after the game, was very happy about Jamin Davis getting that strip sack. Of course, a coach wants to see his players make sure that they work hard at something specifically, and then show results in the preseason game. They're putting in all that time, blood, sweat, and tears throughout the week in practices and things like that, and then to go out there on Saturday or Sundays and to see the fruits of your labor. Of course, Dan Quinn was very excited about that in the post-game interview after the preseason game. And so, is Jamin Davis now a roster lock after just that strip sack alone? Nikki Javala said she thinks so. She thinks that he is going to make it. If we're talking about the edge rusher position, Dante Fowler, Cleveland Farrell, Dorrance Armstrong, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, KJ Henry, and then is the last one, if we're going to keep 6, Jamin Davis. I mean, after that, and again, it wasn't just the strip sack. That was not his only positive play. He also had that really athletic play in space to bat the ball down from the quarterback. Elite timing, elite athleticism to be able to do that. That's not something a lot of people can do in this NFL, man. So that's a really interesting point there. Let me know in the comment section right now how you feel about Jamin Davis's chances of making his roster. And if that strip sack pretty much sealed the deal, he's safe. He's good to go. Also, shouts out to Javonte Jean-Baptiste, again, the 7th round rookie. Got himself a sack. Now, it was more so a coverage sack, so shouts out to the secondary, if anything. But still a good job by him pursuing, not giving up on the play. And nonetheless, man, this regime is very high on him. And so we saw why in spurts last night. Not going to lie. We saw why Javonte Jean-Baptiste using that length. His length is probably his biggest strength right now to his game. And he showed you how that length can affect plays. Again, that motor kept going. It wasn't like an explosive play for the sack, but he stayed with it. He refused to give up, and he ended up getting it. That you get rewarded for working hard. Also, shouts out to John Kahn for saying that Javonte Jean-Baptiste has made plays the last 2 weeks just in general. Not always flashy plays, but steady. Uses his length well. Now moving on to linebacker. And at the end of that tweet, John Kahn pointed out the fact that Dominique Hampton was at inside linebacker, and he was. We're going to get there, though. He's not at safety right now. He's at inside linebacker. But Frankie Louvu, man, that first defensive drive, I believe he had every tackle for the team, at least up to a certain point, man. That boy literally took over that first defensive drive. He literally said, start the game. Bobby Wagner's not here. Most of our defensive starters are not out here. I'm going to take over. It's my turn. I'm going to handle it. Don't even worry about it, man. I mean, it was literally like 3 straight plays where he was the one that made the tackle, man. It was elite stuff, man. I'm telling you, Frankie Louvu, Pro Bowl season loading. Top 3 linebacker in the NFL, top 5 linebacker at least NFL season loading. I'm telling you, you heard it here first. And then going back to Dominique Hampton there, he actually looked pretty good, especially against the run. This is a guy that I talked about this during my live stream. He's definitely starting to get looks at pure off-ball linebacker. This is not cross-training. This is not, because he was brought in here to be a safety. He even played free safety at times for Washington last year in college. But we were bringing him here to kind of be like a Dominique a Jeremy Chin-like role, a J-Ron Kershaw, like a Cam Chancellor, a big safety that plays into the box a little bit. But I guess because our safety room is so deep with so much great talent, and also our linebacker room has a couple of injuries, that I just feel like they're making a full-blown transition. Like Jamin Davis is making the transition from linebacker to defensive end. It looks like Dominique Hampton is making the transition from safety to linebacker, because he's been a pure off-ball linebacker for at least the past week in practices, and you saw it in that preseason game. And again, he looked pretty good against the run. He made a couple of run stops, and then they called a pass interference on him against the backups. I felt like that was a nitpicky call right there. I felt like, to me, it was pretty good coverage, and I feel like the refs hated it, if anything, so I'm not going to dock him for that, but it seemed like he looked pretty decent out there at linebacker. Wasn't great, but I think he's looked pretty good for a guy that's just now making the transition. Again, going from free safety in college to off-ball linebacker is a pretty big leap, man. I mean, there's a lot of steps in between. Free safety, strong safety, box safety, maybe outside will linebacker. Nah, we're talking about pure off-ball inside linebacker. That's what he looked like he was doing out there. So that's really interesting, man. That's a big leap. He skipped a couple of steps. It is pretty encouraging to see how, even though he wasn't perfect, how pretty good he was at times. He flashed in that new role for him. Now moving on to the cornerback position. First of all, I don't know if y'all saw, but pre-game coming out of the tunnel, Mike Sanford still led the team out there. I'm not sure if it was the entire team. It looks like maybe it was just like a handful of people. It looked like it was maybe like 20 people, I guess, that he led out there, but he still led a lot of people out of the locker room, and he was like the leader. Like, he was in front. He turned around, put his fist up, said something to the team, and then they were like, all right, bet, let's go out there. Let's get hype and go out there. So he pretty much rallied the troops there going out there, and then he went out there into the game and showed why they treat him as a leader already, as a second round rookie. I mean, when it comes to the game, that boy Sandra still played like a leader, dog. He played like the great player he's gonna be already. Again, I have him in the running for defensive rookie of the year. Granted, again, being a slot corner, it's really difficult. You have an uphill climb to make as far as winning that award, but I think his name is always going to be in the conversation. But again, Frankie Louvu dominated the first drive, and then the next drive, it seemed like Mike Sanford still basically, this is just me making it up, but he put his hand on Frankie Louvu's shoulder and was like, okay, I got this from here. You had the last drive, I got this one. And then he proceeded to get that drive. He said, I got this, and then he got it this. I know it's not a word, but hey, man. And we didn't have a lot of defensive starters out there again. So again, Frankie Louvu took the first shift. Mike Sanford still came behind and took the second shift, so maybe Frankie Louvu could kind of take, a couple of plays off. I'm not even sure if Frankie Louvu was even out there the second draft. But either way, man, he made plays in coverage, but most importantly, he also made plays against the run as well. He made a stop at the line of scrimmage, completely destroying all of the too small allegations that are out there on his name right there, man. And this was also his second very impressive run stop in consecutive games in very limited plays. This guy's only out there, I believe, as many snaps as Jaden Daniels is out there for the offense. So this is a guy that isn't even playing much, and he already has, as a very small slot corner, two very impressive line of scrimmage stops on the run game, getting past blockers and making a play against the running back. That's very encouraging. I'm telling y'all right now, Mike Sanford still is a dog. Don't be surprised if he's one of the best, if not the best slot corners sooner rather than later, like a lot of the draft analysts were saying even coming out of the draft. And then Linnell Willingham even said that Mike Sanford still is Washington's best defensive back right now. After that joint practice against the Dolphins, where even a Dolphins reporter said that nobody has covered Tyreek Hill this well all summer. From all of the practices that we've had amongst each other this entire summer, going all the way back to OTAs and things like that, nobody has covered Tyreek Hill as well as Mike Sanford still did in that joint practice. And then that had people like Mitch Tisler and several other reporters saying that Mike Sanford still is already our best corner. Now you have Linnell after that game, that preseason game against the Dolphins, saying he's straight up just the best defensive back, period. Anybody in the secondary, he's the best out of any of them. I mean, Mike Sanford still is a different type of guy, y'all. I feel like slot corners don't get enough love. Y'all are gonna learn to love him, man. He's going to be a household name sooner rather than later. I'm expecting that, man. And shouts out to 10 Top Podcast, because they bring up a good point. The way Sanford still plays is such a tone setter for this defense. There's no excuse. He's the smallest person on the field out of our entire defense, and he's out there making run stops at the line of scrimmage like that. Very aggressive, hard-hitting plays. That is definitely a tone-setting play. You see Sanford still at the size he is making plays like that. When you're looking around, you're like, hey, I'm a linebacker. I'm a defensive lineman. There's no reason I'm not making those same plays as well. There's no way this little guy's going to outshine me. I completely agree there. Now moving on to the rest of the secondary. I mean, Tua dropped a dime. I mean, straight to a bucket for a touchdown to whoever River Craft is. I'm not even exactly sure how to pronounce that name, but that is clearly a backup wide receiver, which takes me to my point of Benjamin St-Juste. What were you doing? I know you were right there in coverage, but you still allowed the touchdown, man. And I'm right with Bleeding Burgundy and Gold when he said this. He said, bro, I'm tired of how our corners are always right there on touchdowns. And they are. They're always right there, but to his point, you're never right there if you ain't got no ball skills. It doesn't matter. You could be right there all you want. It's still a touchdown and 7 points for the other team. I completely agree. Shouts out to my boy RVA_point of views on Twitter. I've been telling y'all to follow him and everything, especially since that Dolphins joint practice, because he gave you a lot of the best insight from that practice out of anybody that was there. But he said, New Year, same St-Juste. Never gets his head turned around. One look back, and that's a swatted pass. I completely agree. All St-Juste has to do is read the wide receiver, know the pass is coming, get his head turned around, and you could easily swat it. Again, you're right there. You can easily just turn around and doink. That's it. Simple. You know, or even maybe even pick it off. How about trying that? But never getting your head turned around doesn't give you the ability to make the play that you need. At least have some spatial awareness. I mean, how much more space does the wide receiver have to go? You're already in the corner of the end zone. There's not much more space for him to run. You might as well turn around and play the ball, because there's not much room for the ball to go at this point for it to even potentially be caught. So once you reach a certain point in the back of the end zone, just turn around anyway, even if the receiver isn't going for the ball yet, because what else can happen, really? Just play the ball at that point. I mean, granted, the wide receiver could potentially try to make a move and go elsewhere with a double move or something like that, but just play the ball, man. Look at where the quarterback is. Something. And shouts out to Linnell, because he brings up a good point as well. Problem at outside cornerback right now for this team. Back-to-back weeks, backup wide receivers have scored on starting corners on fade balls with no contact at the line of scrimmage. We got to stop with the mirror technique. They aren't getting their heads turned around. I completely agree there, man. I mean, shouts out to Coach Breeze_ on Twitter. He said this play was already over, like, before it basically started. As soon as the release happened, Benjamin St-Juste gave him a free release, and once he leaned inside with no help over the top, Tua was already throwing the pass right then. Like, literally, he was like, all right, we got him. They're still on the 10-yard line. They're nowhere near the end zone, and Tua is already ready to throw the ball, because he already sees the signs that Benjamin St-Juste is clicked here. I mean, he already knew there was just Benjamin St-Juste was not going to make the right moves after that point there on to make sure that ball is not a touchdown. Shouts out to Burgundy and Zone, though, for my boy Podfather from the Burgundy and Zone show. You make sure you follow them on Twitter, YouTube, everywhere, man. He brings up a great point, though, and I said this during the live stream. We are putting these guys in tough situations, like straight up press man, all of this type of stuff. And these are things that we wouldn't normally be calling. Dan Quinn made sure he emphasized that before the joint practice against the Dolphins, that in that joint practice and in the preseason game that we had last night, this was premeditated. We are going to put these guys in very ugly situations. We want them in the ugliest situations to see who can survive in those situations, so that when we start to actually put them in good situations, these guys ball out. And so far, I mean, Emmanuel Forbes did not necessarily pass the test last week, and then Benjamin St-Juste did not pass the test this week. And again, I just want to emphasize the fact, shouts out to JB Finley for bringing this up again. Week 1, we have to go against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Week 2, Malik Neighbors. Week 3, Jamar Chase. Week 4, Marvin Harrison. And that's just the first 4 games of the season. We have a wide receiver gauntlet, so y'all better get it together. Now, granted, again, Joe Wood Jr., Dan Quinn are going to scheme it up to where these corners are in better situations after we start to get to the regular season and things like that. But I'm not seeing a lot of encouraging signs from this outside cornerback group just yet. I mean, that does not excuse St-Juste at all for that. First of all, that's a backup wide receiver. Let's re-emphasize that. And if I remember right, didn't St-Juste allow the most yards to receivers out of any corner last year? So we got to get back to that 22 version of ourselves, man. But hey, man, first also too, let's get away from the corners just a little bit. Talk to me, McDaniels. Why did you go for 2 4th downs on that drive, man? Why? I mean, and even drawing up good plays as well, like scheming against us type of thing. Like, I thought preseason was supposed to be vanilla. What did we do to you? And then going to Emmanuel Forbes. Now, he got exposed a little bit against the Jets, but I didn't even notice him this game. I believe he went out there for maybe one drive, but shouts out to him. The fact that we didn't notice Emmanuel Forbes was out there shows you that I guess he did a pretty good job of covering people, because I don't even think he was targeted. Now, moving on to the other cornerbacks, you have Chiggy Anusium. He had some good coverage down the field near the sideline on a third down to force a punt at some point later on in the game. And then even after that, during a different drive, Chiggy forced a receiver to hold him for a penalty on a running play. So this is a guy that's hustling. He's making plays in coverage and forcing guys to hold him in the run game. Chiggy's trying to make a case to make this roster. And then AJ Woods had a really bad drive one time. He was just getting picked on. I felt like I should point that out, but I'm not going to harp on it too long. He was pretty much treated like how James Pierre was treated in the Jets preseason game, where he was getting picked on. And then I don't know if y'all noticed this, but they spelled Tariq Castro Fields wrong on his jersey for that preseason game. I'm astonished that they got away with that one. Here's the picture, man. That is crazy. Man, I know if I was Tariq Castro Fields, my mom and my family would be livid about that. I don't know how you make a mistake like that. They would be so upset. How do you mess that up that bad? And it's sad too, because first of all, how does that happen, just period? But secondly, he had a pretty good game from everything I noticed. He had some pass breakups. He made some nice tackles. He looked like one of our better corners out there. Now, granted, he was out there against backups, whereas St. Juice, well, that was still a never mind. That was against a backup receiver. It was against the starting quarterback, but it was against a backup receiver, so no excuse there for St. Juice whatsoever. With the situation they're being put in, with the fact, I mean, there's nothing. He was going against backups, no excuses. We're moving on. But shouts out to Tariq Castro Fields for looking good out there. Then let's move on to the safety group. Quan Martin took over a defensive drive as well. You had Frankie Louvu take over one drive, then Mike Sarenstill took over the next, and then you had Quan Martin take over the one after that, man. I love it, man. It literally seemed like it was Quan's turn to take over. And he made several plays, including the first one being a breakup on a deep shot from Tua, and that one required great chemistry and communication, because at first he was the safety, and then it was like a corner that was covering the receiver. Then the corner handed him off to Quan Martin. Quan Martin stayed with him and made sure that the pass was incomplete. So that was just great coverage from him. He was making plays against the run. I love it. Also, I want to point out the fact that Derek Forrest was out there with the second team defense for the first time this year in the preseason, because he didn't play against the Jets, so he got his first preseason action. And then also shouts out to Percy Butler. Again, we have a very deep safety room, because Derek Forrest was making plays against the Dolphins in joint practice. I didn't necessarily notice him that much against the Dolphins in the preseason game, but Percy Butler, I did notice him. Now, granted, he should have caught that almost touchdown. That should have been a pick because he had his hands on it, but still, shouts out to the receiver for the drop, but also shouts out to Percy Butler for solid coverage there. You gotta finish though. You gotta complete that. You gotta catch that as an interception, but still good coverage there. And then also, of course, now we gotta talk about my boy Tyler Owens. And I'm loving the love that he's getting. And again, I'm never here to say I told y'all so, because my main thing is I've been screaming for Tyler Owens since before we even drafted him, even before we got him as an undrafted free agent. And I'm just so happy with the love that he's getting amongst everybody. At first, barely anybody knew about him. Then we started to see him flash a little bit. He was getting interceptions in practice. He was standing out in special teams. And a couple of people here and there were like, all right, this Tyler Owens kid may need to pay attention to him. Now we're to the point where people are saying that he's probably a roster lock. And that almost brought tears to my eyes. You know what I'm saying? Again, he's one of my three guys. Armani Rogers got cut for the Eagles. But then now I have Tyler Owens and Jeremy Chin still left. And the fact that Tyler Owens is looking how he's looking, I'm so happy, man. He was all over the place today, man. He even saved a touchdown by running it down. You saw the athleticism. Remember, at 6'2", 220 pounds, he said himself that he was supposed to run a 4.2 something at the combine. Remember, Xavier Worthy ran like a 4.21 or something like that. He said that he thought he would have beat him. And he's like double his size, double his weight and everything like that. That is a freak athlete right there. And he showed you that in his ability to run down that receiver to stop that touchdown, man. And then he also had a big hit that actually had the Dolphins running back out for a little second. He was on the field, down on the field. We had to kind of stop the game for a little bit. Then he went to the sideline. But that was still a great hit for him, man. And then you even had Josh Taylor, my boy. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube. He said Tyler Owens looks like one of our best safeties on our team. team. I love to hear that. And then somebody in the chat even asked if Tyler Owens could kick for us too, because of how bad our kicking situation is, man. I'm loving the love that Tyler Owens is getting, man. Absolutely love it, man. Y'all, you won't see a bigger Tyler Owens fan on this team than me, man. I've been shouting for us to get him since March. I had him in 2 of my mock drafts towards us before the draft even happened. And so I'm just happy to not only see him balling out, but to see people noticing how much he's balling out, because that does make me feel comfortable about the fact that he may make this team. Some people are saying he's a lock. A lot of people are saying that in the chat. I don't know, maybe just because I'm rooting for him so hard, I just have this nervous and cautious optimism about him making the team. I'm not 100% sure that he will make it just yet. I'm not bought in yet. Maybe it's just because he's so valuable to me. I'm just that invested in his success. And I'm just afraid to put my heart on the line like that and assume that he's gonna make the team. But I think there is probably a good chance that he will make this team. I really do. And it didn't necessarily feel like that at voluntary OTAs. He had to climb his way up this roster, and I feel like he did just that. I'm very proud of him. Really excited to see what the future holds for him, because this is a guy with an elite ceiling. Like I said, I've already read his athletic profile dozens of times to y'all about him having 96th percentile wingspan, him having one of the longest verticals out of the whole combine, and he had, I believe, like the longest broad jump on any defensive back out of the entire combine. And again, at 6'2", 220 pounds, he was projected to potentially run a 4.3 flat. Maybe he even said he would run in the 4.2s. Like, come on, dog. Like, there's probably only like a handful of other guys that's even in the same athletic realm or tier as this guy throughout the entire NFL, man. I'm telling you, the ceiling is elite. He just has to develop instinctually, like neck up, and he's good to go. Also, shouts out to John Kahn for pointing this out. He said he missed this the first time, but the coaches will love this. Tyler Owens knocked the gunner off his feet on the last punt return. Tariq Castro-Fields rolled him out of bounds first, and then when the guy tried to return back to the field, Owens decleated him. So this is a guy that stands out on defense and special teams. Ben Standig even tweeted at some point last night saying Tyler Owens will make this team isn't close to a hot take. He keeps popping up on defense and special teams. It is music to my ears, man. Absolutely music to my ears. I'm loving what I'm hearing and seeing. Also, before we leave the safety position and go on to special teams, Jeremy Reeves, man, love him on special teams, but defense, it's not looking good, man. I mean, terrible tackling on that reverse from Miami that they did. Should have been like an 8-yard loss. It turned into like a 7-yard gain. Now, granted, bad angles from everybody else on the team as well on that play. But you were right there. You had the guy wrapped up. And then later on, he missed another tackle. So that's 2 really bad missed tackles from Reeves on the same drive. And then, to make it even worse, he had a really bad angle and missed tackle against the Jets last preseason game. So as a safety, he's not looking too good, even though he did have a really big hit later on after all of that to kind of redeem himself a little bit, but not really fully redeem himself. I'm not going to just forget all of the missed tackles he's had against the Jets and the Dolphins before he had that big hit. He used his shoulder for that big hit too. And my boy Jamal at Let Maul Tell It, make sure you follow him on Twitter, subscribe to his YouTube and everything, because he brings up a great point. He tweeted, Reeves said, I might not be able to wrap up as a tackler, but my shoulders do damage. And that's literally what his mentality has to be with the way that he's playing out there. Now let's move on to special teams. Of course, the kicker situation is atrocious. But before we even get to our kicker, first of all, what was going on with that Dolphins punter, man? He kept kicking the ball out of the bounds, and that makes it really hard for us to evaluate the return team. Just like Trace McSorley made it hard to evaluate a lot of our backup receivers, a lot of our depth receivers, guys competing to try to fight to make this roster, receivers and tight ends and things like that. The Dolphins punters made it really hard for us to evaluate our return game, man. Everybody didn't get as many opportunities to show their return skills as they should have, man. Luke McCaffrey was even back there one time and didn't even get a chance to return it because the ball went out of bounds. It's preseason. Nobody told him the memo. Nobody told him what program we was on. We need to evaluate these guys. That's what preseason is for. Why are you kicking it out of bounds? Was he that bad, or was he doing it on purpose? I don't know. But either way, he's the LVP for me out of the whole thing, because he literally just did not give our guys a chance to show what they could do. And I really hate that for them, man. I really, really hate the fact that those guys didn't even get a shot a lot of the times at returning the ball, man. That competition towards the back end of the roster, whoever the better returner is probably going to play a large role into that. So that really sucks there. But also, man, Of course, the kicker situation was terrible. That first drive that Jaden Daniels had, converting 2 third downs for it to not result in the points, man. But then later on, right after that, after missing his first field goal, he made the second one. And then up to that point, he was 1 of 3 on the preseason. And Grant Paulson at the time said hopefully that gives him confidence moving forward. Patterson is 24 and has made 88% of his career kicks from when he was with Cleveland, Detroit, and Jacksonville. So after he made that first one, he missed the first one, made the second one. At that point, he was 1 of 3 in the preseason. Grant Paulson said hopefully that gives him confidence and he's getting to a rhythm moving on. And hey, yo, shouts out to Jaden Daniels for completing a short 5-yard pass to John Bates to help Riley Patterson out a little bit to help him make a 46-yarder after he missed the 49-yarder earlier. So Grant Paulson, first of all, again, he said that hopefully after he made that one field goal, that gives him confidence to make the next one. It didn't, because he missed the next one. He missed the first one, made the second, missed the third. But at least the fourth one, again, shouts out to Jaden Daniels for his situational awareness here, because it would have been, he missed a 49-yarder earlier. Jaden Daniels did a good job of taking it from a 51-yarder to a 46 one by delivering a short pass to John Bates out of bounds real quick to get him in position to make it, and he ended up making it. So shouts out to Jaden Daniels for that one, to pretty much help out our kicker at least a little bit, because I don't think he would have made it without that John Bates completion from Jaden Daniels. I'm not gonna lie. And JB Finley brings up a great point. That guy missed right, and then he missed left before that. The first kick he missed, I believe, was to the left. The second one was to the right, and he brought up the point that any golfer knows that a two-way miss is a big problem. I completely agree. If you're missing consistently one way, maybe we can coach that out of you. But that boy was missing to the left and the right all in one preseason game. That's not healthy, because what do we work on? Shouts out to Commander's Realm, because he brings up a great point. He said kicking a field goal for us is basically the equivalent of having 3 downs basically in a drive. 4th down doesn't exist for us at this point. It doesn't even matter. What's the point? Because he's just gonna miss the kicks anyway. So he missed the 49-yarder, then made the 46-yarder, then missed the 43-yarder, and I started screaming at that point, we needed Joey Sly back, we need Dustin Hopkins back. The grass is always green on the other side, ain't it? But then he made his 38-yarder. It is what it is. But at a certain point in that game, we should have been up 12-10, but we were down 6-10 because he missed 2 field goals. Based on the score, it looked like we didn't do anything on offense, but no, our kicker just sucked. So it is what it is. I mean, and what happened to the guy that was making every kick in Thursday's joint practice? All 50-plus yarders, too. Didn't miss a single one. He even made, I think, one of them was a 56 or a 57-yarder. What happened to that guy? The preseason is the same situation. I mean, it's the same distance. I don't know why the preseason changes it that much. Does he get nervous in games? I don't know. But either way, that's unacceptable. You got to go, man. And shouts out to Sam 48 because he brings up a great point. An additional stat to give you a reason why Riley Patterson needs to go as soon as possible. Over the last 2 years, what the NFL calls the close game era, 55.8% of the games ended with 1 score over the last 2 years. So basically, that's going to magnify every missed kick that you have. It is. This is the worst time to have a bad kicker in NFL history, because this is the time where games are the closest in NFL history. So there's no excuse. Shouts out to my boy at We Want Dallas on Twitter, because he started a thread at 7:57 p.m. The game started at 7. We're not even halfway through the game. He started a Twitter survey saying, when will Riley Patterson be cut this week? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? I'm going to vote Sunday, even though we're already 10:28 a.m. He hasn't been cut, but I voted Sunday, and out of 93 votes, 55% said Sunday as well. Y'all are with me. He's got to go, man. There's no reason to keep him any longer. Missing that many kicks is unacceptable, man. It's absolutely unacceptable. And it's crazy, too, because this guy hasn't even looked good in practice. I'm still not exactly sure why they cut Ramiz Ahmed for him. But either way, no matter what, both kickers were bad. Neither of those two guys were our kickers moving forward. But I guess they wanted to give Riley Patterson a chance to get all of the kicking snaps instead of splitting them with Ramiz Ahmed in practices. And we already knew Ramiz Ahmed was bad. But, I mean, God, he hasn't looked good in practice. He hasn't looked good in games. And we're definitely going to be looking for a kicker. I believe cuts happen in 9 or 10 days. And one of those kickers that gets cut from another team, we shall definitely be looking to pick one of those guys up, man. And shouts out to at J Daniels MVP, because he brings up a great point. Braden Narvison of the Titans, he made 3 kicks yesterday from 21, from 59, and a game-winning one from 46. And the Titans coach Callahan already said that Nick Folk will be their starting quarterback, so it may be a time to jump on that Braden Narvison situation. Both of their kickers are better than any kicker we have right now. That Brandon McManus situation sucks because we had a kicker. We had a good kicker at one point in time, but his whole situation happened. Now we don't. So let's go and get the guy that at J Daniels MVP said, that Braden Narvison guy from the Titans. We need him yesterday. We needed him since the beginning of this offseason, man. But at the end of the day, honestly though, what did we really expect from Riley Patterson, man? Just to re-emphasize this, and I keep bringing this up, but I feel like a lot of people may not necessarily be internalizing this all the way. Remember, this guy is the backup of Chris Blewett at the NFL. Ramiz Ahmed was the backup to Chris Blewett in the XFL. Remember Chris Blewett, the guy that literally blew it? He lived up to his last name. Ramiz Ahmed was his backup. Riley Patterson was Ramiz Ahmed's backup until we just cut Ramiz Ahmed last week. That should tell you everything you need to know about our kicker situation. And then also, moving on with special teams outside of the kicker situation, man, Kazmir Allen, he had a pretty good kick return midway through the second quarter, I believe it was. And then later on, I don't know what he was thinking, but on one of those punt returns, he should have called a fair catch, but didn't, and ended up getting hit really hard. And I mean, maybe the positives you could take away from that is that he can catch, and he's tough, and he can be able to take a hit. But at the same time, man, what are you doing? Were you trying too hard to make a play when you didn't need to? Because you're putting the ball at risk. You're playing dangerously if you're not calling fair catches when you should. I mean, that guy had a clean hit on you, man. It looked like he was trying to chase the big play, and that's not smart. I know you're trying to make a play to make the team, but if anything, you only made it worse for yourself. And then on offense, they tried to use you as a running back, and that experiment didn't last long at all, man. That fumble that he had probably sealed the deal, just like how Mitchell Tinsley sealed his fate with the inability to catch that game-tying touchdown. That boy Kazmir Allen with that fumble, man. I mean, ball security and hands. I mean, that was his problem last year after we brought him in as an undrafted free agent as a rookie. And then you go out there and fumble in the preseason in your second year, it's pretty much wraps for you. And again, that's another guy that it sucks because he was making plays all season. And then when we get to the preseason, he doesn't step up the way that he should have, man. And also moving on, again, just to remind you, Luke McCaffrey was out there as a punt returner, but the punt went out of bounds, so we couldn't see him do his thing. But on punt coverage, Luke McCaffrey did a great job at gunner. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't expect that from him necessarily, and that's great news. I mean, Luke McCaffrey's making his team. He's not in any risk of not making his team, but that's great to see that he can make plays as a receiver. He can get open. He can make contested catches. And then on special teams, even though he didn't get to show us what he could do as a punter, he showed you that he could at the very least be a good gunner out there. And then lastly, Bryson Tremaine, who of course is trying to make this roster as one of the top 6 receivers. Maybe they keep 7, even though I doubt it. He did really good on special teams, man. Shouts out to Grant Polson for pointing out the fact that he made a nice play on punt coverage and also nearly blocked the punt as well. So not bad from the 6'4" wide receiver from Stanford. Will definitely help his chances of making the roster. This guy had great punt coverage, and he also almost had a punt block. Watch out for him. And now before we get up out of here, we have other people's reviews of what went down in that joint practice today. Zach Selby did an article of his 5 takeaways. I want you to go read his article, so I'm not going to break down the full details and the full essay that he had written down. I'm just going to read off his takeaways. He said Jaden Daniels passed another test, and of course he has a whole few paragraphs dedicated to explaining what he means by that. He also said Frankie Louvo and Mike Sanders still are an exciting duo. I agree. Jamin Davis showed progress. Jeff Driscoll has wheels. And then lastly, still more questions at kicker. Then Chris Russell brought up some good points as well. He said plenty of guys flashing tonight. Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson, Driscoll's running, John Baptiste on a sack. Olamide Zaccheaus looked pretty good as well. I should have talked about him in the receiver part because he's probably your wide receiver 3 right now. De'Ami Brown, wide receiver 2. Jahan Dotson looks like wide receiver 4 right now. But also Luke McCaffrey stepped up and made some plays today. So I don't know. He also said tackling continues to be a bit of an issue in the secondary. Reeves in both games, like I pointed out earlier. And he said that Riley Patterson and Andrew Wiley with tough moments as well at the kicker and right tackle spot, with Andrew Wiley getting the false start and the holding penalty. And then Sam Restill, he also said, will be a dude early. John Bates with a great catch as well. And Terry McLaurin was good while he was in. I completely agree with all of those. Then you have Mason Kinahan. He did a stock up, stock down. He said Jamin Davis stock up. De'Ami Brown stock up. Frankie Louvu stock up. Tyler Owen stock up. Yes, sir. Tariq Ashfield stock up. Completely agree. Stock downs, though, he said Riley Patterson, Kazmir Allen, and overall the team health. I completely agree with all of those as well. And then lastly, we have Linnell Willingham. And he said that's a wrap for the preseason game number 2. His stock ups were Jaden Daniels, De'Ami Brown, the run game, offensive line, Jamin Davis, Quan Martin, and Mike Sanford. Still completely agree. But his stock downs were Benjamin St-Juste and pass rush. Now, the Benjamin St-Juste one I can definitely see, even though I already gave you the reasons as to why he was probably set up for failure, but it's still no excuse, so I agree with that one. Pass rush-wise, though, I mean, what can we really surmise from that? The only starter on the defensive line that was out there was Dorrance Armstrong, so I kind of disagree with that. I wouldn't necessarily say that our pass rush is a stock up or anything, but also I feel like the information that we received from that preseason game was too incomplete for us to surmise and come to any conclusions on what our pass rush is looking like, because neither Jonathan Allen, nor Deron Payne, nor Cleveland Farrell, or Dorrance Armstrong were out there. And I feel like they did a pretty decent job for who we had out there. And then, before we get up out of here, speaking of kickers, Brandon Aubrey made a 66-yarder for the Cowboys in their preseason game, which, even though it was a preseason game, so it technically didn't count for the record books, that would have tied for the longest field goal kick in NFL history. And so our guys out here missing 43-yarders, what's the excuse, man? You got guys out here making 66s. You better go out there and scour and comb the whole world. You better go and find a guy in a Brazilian rainforest, if that's what it takes, a guy that has soccer aspirations, and you can just go steal him and make him a kicker something, man. And also, lastly, before we get up out of here, the Vikings went ahead and signed Pro Bowl corner Stephon Gilmore. Already gave y'all the heads up on this last week when he went to go fly to Minnesota to meet with them. So you already saw that. The writing was on the wall. Remember, Justin Simmons, Pro Bowl, all-pro safety, signed with the Falcons. Stephon Gilmore just signed with the Vikings. So both of those guys are off the table, just to give you the heads up. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. I really appreciate it. I didn't even expect this video to end up going on recording for like an hour and 30 minutes. I didn't expect it to be that long. So if you really appreciate these full, in-depth, fully detailed breakdowns, please make sure at the very least you leave a like. But shouts out to everybody that's been donating to the Cash App, to the PayPal, and even the Super Chat during the live streams. And even while I'm not live streaming, some people just send donations out of nowhere to the Cash App, and I always make sure I shout y'all out in my following video. Speaking of, shouts out to my boy Jay Benjamins for the Cash App donation a couple of days ago. Really appreciate that, man. That is big love to send that donation out of nowhere. I'm not even live streaming, just to send it. Much love there, man. So shouts out to all of y'all supporting the channel. Again, the money goes right back into the channel. Y'all see, if y'all were there for the live stream, you see I have even more reactions with GIFs and all kinds of funny things and stuff like that while we're live streaming. That's made possible because through y'all donations, I was able to purchase a bigger stream deck. So, and y'all remember when I got the updated camera that I have now and all of the different lighting I got. So again, the money goes right back into the channel to upgrade the quality. So I really appreciate y'all for that. And of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Give me your breakdown of what you saw in the preseason. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later this evening or tonight with another video probably. Catch y'all later. I'm out.